Cronos, the new dawn on Steam Deck, thanks to Bloober Team for providing a code of the game. So I've been playing this game a day before release, I think, on my main computer. And it happens to be verified on Steam Deck, but it's a UE5 game, and usually UE5 games verified on deck sometimes are ultra performance upscaling on the lowest settings, so let's see how this one fares. Oh, and by the way, Valve says Proton 10.0-2 beta was selected. This game does have a Linux build, but the Windows build through Proton actually works better, so keep that in mind. Alright, so welcome to the options menu. Since this game is verified, I usually try the default settings first, and by default it's at 800p. No FPS limit, no upscaling, and no frame generation, which is good to see. But the quality preset is set to very low. Very low wasn't available on PC, at least for me. Motion blur only for cutscenes, personal preference, same with chromatic aberration, I disabled it completely. But there's a big bug that you have to keep in mind. I played this on PC first, and when I played the game on Steam Deck with my latest save file, very low was not available, like at all, it was missing. So if you don't see the very low preset, make sure to delete the Proton files and disable the cloud saves, at least for now. And very low should show up. Not sure if it's because the config file syncs with the cloud, which shouldn't happen. So by default it's on very low. This seems to be, again, specific for Steam Deck and maybe lower end devices, but yeah, this is important. And I want to thank Instant Gaming for sponsoring this video. Instant Gaming is a website where you'll find cheaper games for PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo Switch. You got the game we're playing today, Cronos, the New Dawn, Hell is Us, Scum for 2210, and other games that I recommend like Hollow Knight, Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, the Indiana Jones games. Those are Steam keys. And due to this partnership, we're giving away one free game to one of you guys each month from Instant Gaming, a game of your choice. Hit to participate, follow myself and Instant Gaming in social media. Last winners were these ones a few months ago, so each month we get a new one. Thanks again to Instant Gaming for sponsoring this video. Let's continue. Alright, so welcome to Cronos, the New Dawn. Again, UE5 game, very low. We're not using upscaling, funnily enough, and we're getting great performance at the very beginning that nothing's happening. But again, you're going to see traversal stutter. That also happens on my main PC. It's not a Steam Deck exclusive issue. And you might say, how is a UE5 game running like this on Steam Deck without any upscaling and frame generation? Well, actually, this UE5 experience seems to be heavily downgraded when it comes to draw distance of objects, complexity of game objects as well. As you can see, this should be rounded, but it has edges. And probably there's less samples when it comes to ray tracing on Lumen, software Lumen. Also, the shadow quality seems to be lower, the resolution of the shadow seems to be lower. But again, considering it's very low, it still looks pretty damn good, at least so far. But there is, again, certain shadows that don't have the highest quality in comparison to low. But again, we're playing UE5 on a 2020 portable machine, so that's something to keep in mind. Still, if you never tweak settings like I do on my channel, you're probably going to be happy with this. As you can see, the shadow quality here is pretty low resolution, but again, we're playing this on a Steam Deck without upscaling. That to me is a green light. Unless they're not telling us that they're doing upscaling or something, but many rounded objects are not rounded with these settings, like this light. This light is rounded instead of a triangle. But again, small details. But if it means no upscaling on UE5 on Steam Deck with obviously lower graphics, I mean, for the most people that are playing games on Steam Deck, this shouldn't be a problem. They're not going to notice anything wrong if they never played this on a higher end computer. So I'm happy that this is an option. Considering the game is verified, many UE5 games don't have something custom like this. That crate probably should have a shadow on the higher settings, but again, this looks pretty damn good, considering it's a Steam Deck and UE5. Okay, so despite being the very low setting, my flashlight is casting shadows, which affects performance, and I also noticing stuff into the distance, the lighting. It destroys itself at a very short distance. As you can see, the shadows there generate in front of you, but again, UE5 game on Steam Deck at a very high frame rate on native resolution. And by very high frame rate, the Steam Deck standards for me are, okay, you are basically playing a UE5 game without upscaling at more than 40 FPS. That to me is high performance on Steam Deck. Let's save. Okay, first combat encounter. Okay, some stutters here and there, no big deal. We're using the entire CPU. I'll probably lock it to 40, honestly. Yeah, we can get 60s in some indoor places, but it's nothing I would say that you need to keep it unlocked. It works completely fine. So yeah, in order to have into account enemies that could show up and all that stuff, I think we're good with a 40-45 FPS cap. Let's continue. Okay, we're outside. Outside actually seems to be running worse. Interesting. Let's try higher settings. Okay, so now we're looking at low on, well, on a UE5 game. Ooh, and it hard locks to 13 FPS sometimes, yeah. I think it's using all the memory. So sometimes it could happen. But yeah, I'm noticing that the draw distance and the lighting is significantly better. I'm going to show you a comparison in a moment, but it's way darker on low. But we seem to be running into memory limitation, very heavy memory limitation, so it hard locks to 15. I saw some people online that actually got it to crash a few times with this preset. So I'm not entirely sure on what's going on there, but very low is definitely the way to go to avoid those hard locks to 15. I tried restarting the game a couple times and it still happens pretty randomly when entering new areas. And we're using all the RAM and VRAM, so all the memory is being utilized. I saw some videos online that the game was running fine with this preset, but honestly, it seems to be maybe the exception rather than the rule. Okay, so I'm loading a tiny bit ahead. Let's see, we get outside. Here the frame rate is fine. In the middle of that place, I was hard locking to 15. So out here it seems to be better. Let's see. Did I speak too soon? Yes, I did. Yeah, here it goes again. So it's interesting because I didn't see this issue on other performance videos out there. Not sure what could be the cause of this. But I mean, at least it happens to me consistently, no matter how many times I reset the settings. But again, my advice here is to keep it on very low. If you don't see very low, you're probably played it on PC or something and it synchronizes the config file with the Steam Deck. We do not want that, otherwise the very low settings don't show up for some reason. Hope they can take a look at that because it's important. And since this game is very, very dark, the atmosphere, I'm crushing the darkness with brightness so you can actually see the game. Otherwise you'll see my reflection on the screen. You're still seeing it, but again, with the very low preset, yeah, despite the lighting being worse, the draw distance being significantly worse, if you look at that object there, for a smaller screen, I think it makes a lot of sense, especially a lower powered device like it's the Steam Deck. This is a UE5 game. As I say every time I play a UE5 game on Steam Deck, the Steam Deck has no business playing UE5 games considering how they run. Of course, as you can see, the lighting, the draw distance of the lighting is reduced significantly, but in my opinion it doesn't make the game unplayable. Of course, the atmosphere is worse when it comes to the game because it's a very dark horror game, but I think it goes over very, very well considering it's a super stripped down version of the settings on very low. It still looks pretty good. It looks basically like the game. It's not like, I don't know, Metal Gear Solid Delta, that one when you put it on the lowest there is no lighting, there's no light, no shadows. Here there's actually shadows from the moon, and your flashlight also casts shadows. The thing is the draw distance of that's what changes. Well, the model draw distance and the model quality, that's much lower as well. But again, on a smaller screen it's less obvious. Yeah, you'll notice it if you look at it side by side, like you can see over here. Those are a couple examples on what you can see in the difference. But again, it's the difference between being at native resolution with lowered settings and all that, like you're seeing here, versus being on performance upscaling with hard locks to 15 FPS here and there. I mean, I think it makes no sense to go any higher than very low, at least in my opinion. Again, it's just my opinion. But what would I recommend when it comes to frame rate? Well, since you encounter enemies and you have to fight them, obviously, I highly recommend either a 40 FPS lock or 45. 45 should do in most instances, but if you do 40s, it should be better also for the LCD Steam Deck to get more battery life, and this is completely fine, in my opinion. There are some stutters here and there, that's a UE5 limitation, but the game feels freaking smooth, which is what matters, right? And considering, again, this is a UE5 game, Silent Hill 2 didn't have settings like this that were tailored to lower power devices. So I think this is a great effort. It's not a lazy, very low setting. It actually still looks decent on the absolute lowest. And it's rare for a UE5 game, when it's on the lowest settings, to actually look like a game instead of a potato 3D rendering from 20 years ago. And at native resolution, we're not playing with upscaling, as far as I know. I'm not noticing much of an upscaling effort. Seems to be native, which is great to see. So I wouldn't say this is lazy game settings, especially considering that if you go to the low preset, it uses all the memory, and at least on my side, it hard locks to 15 FPS. But again, in my opinion, it looks fine on very low, and considering how Steam Deck usually runs UE5 games, I think they did great here. Although here it hard locked to 20 something, what the hell. Never mind, it was just a traversal stutter. Still noticeable, but I mean, imagine how that drop would have been if we didn't have the very low setting. And so far this feels a lot like Dead Space when it comes to the atmosphere and the camera, but it also feels more like a blend of Dead Space, Resident Evil, and maybe some Evil Within 2 as well. It reminds me a lot of Evil Within, not the second one, the first one. More of a gritty survival horror game with over-the-shoulder camera. But I'm happy with this. Is it verified? Yes. Is it verified enough? I'd say so. They actually put a decent graphical setting for Steam Deck. Yeah, it decreases the graphics, but I mean, that's the point. It's UE5 on a handheld, and despite the drops in visuals that they did, especially with draw distance of light, amount of darkness, and the pop-in of some elements, and the simplified meshes, I think this is fine. Especially considering that the pixel count is not super upscaled like other UE5 games, and we can actually lock it to 40 with some stutters here and there. So GG. I think it's verified. It earns that title, in my opinion. They actually made an effort to make it work without looking like a potato. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see ya next time. Bye guys.